I know there's a lot of noise right now. Odell Beckham, Baker Mayfield, whatever is going on, but my goodness, it's a game this week. And it's not just a game, it's a pretty big game. It's one of the biggest games that the Browns, it's the biggest games the Browns have played this year because the Bengals have taken the league by storm. Yeah, they had a disappointing loss last week versus the Jets, but the Bengals, still no joke. And to talk about the Bengals, the man that's been trying to tell me all offseason, Q, you wrong on them Bengals. You wrong. You hating on them. Ace Boogie, man. How you doing?
I'm good, Q. How you doing, bro?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. I just did the Odell stream. So this is gonna go up, I think, about 2 days after that. So we all right. Hopefully everything's okay. Hopefully nothing broke between the time that I ended the stream and started this. But I'm pretty sure by the time this video goes up, it's gonna be like 5 other things in news. But how's it going in Bengals world? Is it as eventful there? How you guys have been handling the upset loss to the Jets?
I think it's definitely died down like a little bit just because you had this kind of top of the world moment from just thrashing the Ravens like that. Like nobody saw that coming. I think even Bengals fans, like, we knew that we had a shot in that game, but for us to go all the way up like that and then to have the national media narrative change, I think was just a lot. And then to have it all coming crashing down the next week, it kind of just put things into perspective. Like, don't get too excited or too high off of one win because that ends up leading to probably a trap game, right? It happened to the Ravens the week before with them thrashing a team like the Chargers. And then that kind of allowed us to kind of sneak in there and do something. So I think right now it's just like, all right, we just lost to the Jets. It's super frustrating, but we can't key in on that because we have a serious team like the Browns coming in this week, the AFC North Division. You got the Steelers that just started picking up some steam. So the focus just now has to be on go back to the approach of winning every week that you were on before the national media was talking about you. And I think that that's where we're kind of at now is, okay, we got to maintain focus because this is a Cleveland team that is talented. And if they beat you at home, then you're really going to be in trouble after that Jets loss and that Bears loss.
Definitely, definitely. So Browns coming into this game with a bit of turmoil. Odell, he's not going to play this Sunday. I'm pretty sure he's not going to play. The question is whether he's going to be on the team technically by the time Sunday comes around. We don't know yet, but he's definitely not playing. Now, there's been this narrative of that Baker Mayfield is much better without Odell for whatever reason, and there are splits that heavily support that. I mean, it's undeniable at this point that those numbers do line up like that. For Bengals fans, is this one of those weird situations where they're kind of more nervous about the game now that Odell's not going to play versus what they would have been if the Browns would have had Odell still active on this roster?
So the first thing I think it is, but the funny thing is the first thing that I was thinking when they were talking about, the Odell situation, I thought that this could be his get right game because I'm like, all right, let's not let this be the get right game for Odell. But I think it's still dangerous because I do believe that without Baker, it helps the offense flow a lot smoother. Like he doesn't get in trouble if he goes to Jarvis or if he goes to Njoku or if he spreads it out. Whereas when you have someone like that in Odell, sometimes you have to make sure that they get those targets, right? And the Bengals went through something similar last year with AJ Green. Even though Joe Burrow and AJ Green had bad chemistry, you had to get AJ Green those targets. And at one point, when the chemistry wasn't working, they had to start going to other players. And as you see, we ended up kind of going our separate ways in this offseason. But I do think that there will be a chip on Baker's shoulder to show, hey, there's a reason why we sent this guy home, and Kevin Stefanski as well. Hey, there's a reason why we sent this guy home. And hey, look, we can play very well without him, and the offense can be successful without Odell Beckham Jr. And yeah, I do think after the Bengals just gave up 400 yards to Mike White, yeah, I think that you should be on notice and be concerned that not only are the Browns fighting, I think, for their position in this division and for their season, they're also trying to go out and prove a point this weekend that we can be better without Odell Beckham Jr. and Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't make this team. So I think that there's a combination of that may put some worry in the head of Bengals fans.
Definitely, definitely. So Injury wise, where are the Bengals at? Are they in a good place right now? Do they have any major injuries coming up for this game, or are they getting relatively healthy here? I know they have some injuries in the secondary in previous weeks.
Right. I know, like, from what I've seen, a lot of us were worried about Jackson Carman because he did end up leaving that game last week with a lower back injury. But it seems today that he should be appearing in this game. So that was a big concern because we really didn't have much depth outside of him, and we had to throw in a 6-round rookie. So that was definitely concerning when you talk about a talented Browns defensive line. But everything looks like he should. Jackson Carman should be appearing in that game. Outside of that, we actually haven't had many major injuries. I know Auden Tate was out last week, but I think I would assume that he's back this week. And for the most part, like, most of our guys have been pretty much healthy for the starters and those guys like that. So no major guys that are going to be out. I know that Trey Hendrickson kind of had some rest day things that they've been doing for the past 2 weeks, but I expect everyone to be there. Jesse Bates, I'm not sure. I'll have to check on his status, but I think that, as far as I know and as far as I've heard, as we're recording this on Wednesday, it doesn't seem like anybody major is going to be out for the Bengals.
All right, so let's talk about some of the matchup issues that the Browns, I think, will have against the Bengals here. Jamar Chase, he's been a matchup issue for every team in the league. Had a little bit of a down game, only 35 yards and a touchdown for him. That's still better than Allen Robinson be doing out there. Shout out Allen Robinson. But yeah, I'm petty. I'm gonna bring it up every chance I get. Man had 2 receptions, 15 yards last week. We might have to trade for him, given that we ain't got no Odell no more. Given the fact that Jamar has been lighting up these offenses, and the Browns specifically have been having issues with deep threats. Although it's a weird issue with deep threats, right? You look at the guys who have really killed them. It's been Patrick Mahomes. It's been Justin Herbert. It's been Kyler Murray. These guys who are known for having great arms and being able to attack the ball downfield. Now, Jamar Chase is a great deep threat, and he's been dynamic in that area. Joe Burrow, not necessarily known as a deep ball guy or an arm strength guy before Jamar Chase really got there. Do you think the Bengals will be able to take advantage of those same things that the other teams were, given that Joe doesn't have that same type of arm strength that those other quarterbacks were able to exploit with his Browns secondary?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Joe really honed in on, and I talked about it last year, if you had to point to any part of his game last season that was an issue, it definitely was the deep ball. The completion percentage was extremely low. There wasn't much chemistry there. It just was bad last year. And one of the aspects, I think, of him working on his game and recovery was improving that velocity, and not only getting a deep ball and establishing a deep ball, but also getting someone that he was familiar with. And that's where they entered with Jamar Chase. Now, it's been something that they've gone to, and it's definitely been a repertoire. He's even started to kind of use it with CJ Uzomah and as well with T. Higgins for the last game. But I think that it depends on how defenses play us, right? Because since the Bengals have had so much success with it, that's literally what the Jets tried to stop last week whenever Jamar Chase was on the field. They made sure that however they aligned, that the deep ball wasn't going to be a factor. And the Bengals had to go to it with a different person in T. Higgins last week. And I think that is definitely part of what they like to do, especially with Chase. Whenever he's got that one-on-one and Joe sees him, then he's going to let it fly. I think that he's it's almost like night and day if you're comparing his rookie season in terms of his deep ball to now. He's pretty good at it now. He's never going to be, like you said, a Justin Herbert. He's never going to be a guy like that, but it's good enough for you to be able to beat teams. And it is something that the Bengals do go to in their repertoire. And sometimes it takes them, I think their only miscue is that sometimes they wait too late to do it. Like, they'll wait until like the end of the second quarter or something like that. So they don't take enough shots in some fans' eyes with it, and they just wait too long to get to it. But it is a big part of this offense, and I think that it'll be interesting to see how the Browns play it, because you can either go with the double team, but when you have a good corner like Denzel Ward, it'll be interesting to see how they play it. But because that's what Baltimore did, they kind of put Marlon Humphrey on them and just trusted the help over the top. They were cool with letting him be on an island, right? So it just really depends on how they use it, but I think it's always going to be a part of the game plan, even if it's not to Jamar Chase, because they've had some success with T. Higgins with it. And I was wondering why they didn't do that, because the only success that he had with the deep ball last year was literally to T. Higgins, like in the Colts game and in some of those games. So I think that it is a part of the recipe, but we'll have to see how they react to how the Browns defense decides to play it.
So if you're Zach Taylor, I think we talked about Joe Burrow, we talked about Jamar Chase, but let's talk about Joe Burrow's blind side or that offensive line matchup versus what's been a very good defensive line, or at least the edge rush last week. The defensive tackles are terrible, but they've usually been pretty good versus this Bengals offensive line. Do you think they're going to be at what solutions do you think they're going to have for like a Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney? And do you think they're going to be able to block them successfully, or are they going to have to game plan a little differently to get around those two guys?
I think, in my opinion, that they should game plan for Myles Garrett. Like, you can't let him get a one-on-one. And I have this big fear that they are going to think that they can leave Jonah Williams in a one-on-one matchup with Myles Garrett, and honestly, it scares me. I really think that they should probably use somebody to chip on him and stuff like that. They haven't done that in the past, and it's kind of crazy. But I think depending on how Frank Pollock wants to handle this, that's probably the way that they'll go about it. Now, one thing that I will say is they have done some things against good pass rushing teams or good blitzing teams. They've really kind of struggled with the free rushers. And so things that they've done in previous weeks is they've brought in guys like CJ Uzama, or they've brought up the running backs a little bit closer to the line to help out in that area. I think that you'll definitely see some form of that against Myles Garrett, but I'm still worried that they're going to have on some snaps Jonah being left on the island with Myles Garrett, which, as you know, is not something that you want to do. In terms of Jadeveon Clowney, he's also going to be a force, right? And he definitely proved me wrong with how he's been playing with Myles Garrett. I think that you have to account for him, but I think the logic for the Bengals is probably, hey, we need to focus completely on Myles Garrett and try to isolate him. We're going to give Jonah a chance on going one-on-one with him, but if he gets a sack, we're going to have to leave some assistance or put some assistance over there to help him with Myles Garrett, because we don't want Myles Garrett wrecking this game. And hey, by the way, Riley Weef, we need you to hold it down against Jadeveon Clowney. So I think that that's what their primary focus is really going to be on. But it does scare me because they have all the confidence in the world in Jonah. And not to say that I don't, right? But this is Myles Garrett what we're talking about. He can go against good tackles all the time, and they're still going to throw somebody extra out there to help them with Myles Garrett at times. But I think that that's how they'll go with it. And depending on if it holds up, they may let Jonah try to take some chances and may try to take some chances with that. But it's a tough situation to be in. Yeah, I think that Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney are definitely going to present some issues for them. But I think that they're confident that they can try to keep them at bay. But I'm not that confident that they can.
We'll see. Myles Garrett at what, 10.5 sacks already?
10.5 sacks, bro. He's almost about to have 20. And when I talk to someone that's not necessarily in the Bengals front office or anything like that, but that man told me, he was like, look, they better not try to let Myles go one-on-one. They better not do that. That can't be
it's a death sentence. He's unblockable one-on-one. Like, if there's a reason, it's really hard to one-on-one him. He's fast, strong.
And I think Utah, was it the Ravens that you said? It was like one of the teams in the division, they just take like 2 or 3 people and they're just like block Myles.
Oh, the Ravens always just give you half of the offensive line. They give us a guard, a tackle, and a tight end, and maybe even a running back chip on the way to the flat on Myles Garrett. They always do 3 heads on him. The Ravens have never messed around with Myles Garrett. The Steelers had Big Andy out there one time against Myles Garrett in his second year, I think, and Myles Garrett forced a tie against the Steelers in 2018 by himself. He got like 2 strip sacks in a row and forced a tie. Like, it was something. It was like I didn't know a defensive end could do something like that to take over a game.
He can take over again.
It was something amazing there. So Myles Garrett, we know he's a very amazing player. Probably the Browns' best player that they have. If you're the Bengals, if you are Zach Taylor or just a Bengals fan wondering if you guys can pull it off, I want to know on both sides of the ball. I mean, other than Myles Garrett, the obvious one, and other than like Nick Chubb, I think would probably be the obvious one on the offensive side of the ball. What are you worried about on both sides of the ball that's not obvious that could ruin this game or your game plan if you're the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, even if it's not just Nick Chubb, right? And I don't think that he's going to kill them in this area, but I may be wrong because the Packers kind of threw me off with A.J. Dillon because when you think about Nick Chubb, and it's nothing against him or anything, but you're not thinking about a guy that's really going to catch balls out of the backfield, right? And that's what I thought about A.J. Dillon until they started doing it. So honestly, Felton actually scares me in this game because the two games that the Bengals defense has been thrown off, it's really been covering those flats with the linebackers and those running backs catching those screens and stuff like that and getting those extra yards. So in terms of that, I think the screen game period is something that this team has struggled with, making sure that they cover the flats. I would also probably say the linebackers. I'm kind of worried about that matchup with Njoku, with Harrison Bryant, with those guys that you guys have at the tight end position. Can they contain those guys? And then as far as on the offensive side of the ball, can we be consistent against a defense that has talent? It's there, right? You look at all of the depth that you guys have. You look at the secondary. You look at the linebackers. You look at the defensive line. There's really no weaknesses on this Browns team where they don't have talent, right? So the biggest thing for this offense, and that's been the Achilles heel of this offense, is can they be consistent? The first quarter, they have just not been a consistent offense. I think there's only been one game where they've actually scored on their first possession of games this season. And that's been something that's been frustrating. And even Joe Burrow showed some frustration last week early in that game. The other thing is capitalizing on opportunities. And I'm not just talking about strictly turnovers. If it's a 3 and out and you get lucky, right, you got to be able to put some points on the board after that, because this is an offense in the Cleveland Browns that can answer the door and can answer you and come back and go and get a touchdown if you yourself get a 3 and out. So I would say being more consistent offensively is definitely one of the Achilles heels of this team. And then the other thing I'll say is they have to figure out a way to effectively establish the run. Even though Joe Mixon is near the top of the league or the top 5, top 6, whatever it is now, as far as rushing, his yards really haven't come as a like Derrick Henry, like Nick Chubb, like game plan. They really have just been in random points in the game where he's just breaking off and getting touchdowns. And that's been something that's been a struggle because especially last week, they tried to run a lot of this draw stuff and there just weren't any holes there. So I think that they definitely have to have a better balance of the run game with the pass game. It's always been kind of awkward. It's like they'll get something really going in the passing game, and then on like 2nd and 9, it's like, hey, let's pull out this draw. And it's like, no, you didn't need to run here. So the balance of that is something that I think is actually a fear as well that contributes to the consistency on offense. And I would also say just essentially making sure that you manage this game as a coach from Zach Taylor's standpoint effectively in terms of your challenges and your timeouts, because in a game like this, those are going to be decisions. And maybe it's like that you do have to challenge some things, but that's going to be crucial, I feel like, in an AFC North matchup like this.
Definitely. Ace, thank you for coming on. If you want more Ace Boogie, and I know you do, AFC North Talk. We do it Tuesdays and Fridays. We also have New Stripe City on YouTube, and Orange is the New Black everywhere where you can find podcasts. Wherever they are, they're there. Anywhere else that you are at that I missed?
You can find me on Twitter at New Stripe City, and that's pretty much it for the most part.
Definitely, guys. Check him out. Check us out on AFC North Talk. Hey, have a good one, y'all.